Hello, my name is Carlos Urban, and today I'd like to review the sharpness of the 2470 2.8 VR. I've read some places that the new VR 2470 is not as sharp as the old one, and I disagree. I've had the old one for a long time, and I got the new one, and I think they're both as sharp. So I'm gonna do a little demonstration, but before doing that, if you haven't tried or bought the lens, or if you just got it, well, like all the lenses that Nikon has, you have here the different VRs. So you have off, normal, and active. Uh, when you are on a tripod, you want to have it in off. Don't forget that, because otherwise the camera is going to vibrate, thinking that it's not on a tripod, trying to stabilize it. Normal is, so the way to think about it is, when you're not moving, use normal. When you're moving, use active. So what does it mean when you're moving? Why would you take a picture where you're, well, you may be in a car, maybe in a boat, or maybe trying to do some panning. So in those cases, you want to use the active. But when you're just taking normal pictures, you use the normal. Now, this zoom lens is for a lot of people who are like wedding photographers or event photographers, their favorite lens, because it's so flexible. You can go all the way from 24 millimeters, which is like a wide angle, all the way to 70, which is almost the idea for a headshot. So it gives you that flexibility from a full body shot, or if you have a group of people and you want to have more people in a group, to a headshot. So I'm gonna set up the lens now to take a few pictures. Uh, okay, so we're back. So basically, this is kind of the picture that I'm using. I just changed it to a different label because this is not a flat surface and it's not helping. So what I'm doing is I'm focusing on the eye of this player, Burnett, and then I also want to see they're all in the same plane, so that they should all be sharp since they're in the same depth of field. Then also we want to see the effect of the 2.8, okay? And because I'm shooting, so what I'm gonna do is right now I'm at 24 millimeters, okay? And I'm gonna shoot, I have it on aperture priority. I set the exposure compensation at plus 0.3, so a third of a stop. I'm shooting raw, so you're basically gonna see the output in raw. So first let's try at 2.8, and then let's keep changing the apertures. Okay, so here's the picture. Okay, so what we're gonna do now is we're gonna go 1 to 1 to see the sharpness. Okay, give it a little chance to fully load. So you can see here, but you need to look at the letters that are a little darker because those are very light. You can see here it's very, very sharp. And I'm focusing on the eye. So this eye, well, here you can see better. The contrast here is better. And as you would expect from a 2.8, you have a blurry background, even at 24 millimeters. So this is very nice. So let's now change to f4. Oh, by the way, we're shooting at ISO 100. Since I'm using a tripod, I don't need to worry too much about the shutter speed, okay? So I put it on the native ISO of my D800, which is 100. So now, this is at f4. So you can see now it's a little, less blurry. You can see more of the background. So now let's check the sharpness. So here, now I think it's fully loaded. So the sharpness of the eye. It looks a little less sharp than the previous one. Let's just check, compare the two, one versus the other. It may be because of the shutter speed, maybe the camera, there is a little bit of shake. Yeah, I think 2.8 looks a tiny bit sharper, but it may be because this one was at 1/8 of a second and this one was at 1/15 of a second. So maybe what we should do is let's change the ISO to 200. Okay, let's go back to our shot. Now let's take another one. So you see now it's at 1/20 of a second, which is a little bit faster shutter speed. Okay, so now sometimes you have to give it a second to load, to fully load. These are big files because it's a D800, so it's 36 megapixels. Sometimes, okay, now you see how it changed? Look how it's very, very sharp now. So now when we compare this one with the previous one, which were both shot at f4, let's see, this one. Yeah, I was trying to switch them places, but it's easier to look at it this way. You see, this is 1/20 of a second, and it looks a little sharper than this one that was 1/8 of a second. So, even with a tripod, when you have a slow shutter speed, that could cause a little bit of shake as well. Okay, so now let's continue. And I'm gonna go a little quicker now. I'm gonna go to, so let's go to f8. F8 is usually the sharpest of any lens. And because I don't want to have that problem with the shake, let's go to ISO 400. Wow, even at ISO 400 still is 1/8 of a second. So let's go to 800. I just don't want to have noise. So if there is noise, let's see. This is supposed to be the sharpest. F8 is typically the sharpest that you can have on a lens. Let it finish loading. I don't think it focused correctly. There's something else. Let me make sure. Okay, now it's focused. Let's try again. Oh, now it's a little better. So it had not loaded completely. I apologize, it takes a little bit of time to load. So this one was f8. Okay, so this is the second one. So let's see. I have to give it a little second to fully load. It is a little surprising that it's not. Oh, here it is. No, it was loading. Sorry. It's super sharp, perfectly sharp. You can even read these ones. So just so that you can see how much sharper f8 is than, let's say, 2.8. Let's compare the two. Okay, so this one is 2.8 and this one is f8. So whenever you want to have the sharpest, like when you're shooting in studio, because you don't care about the background, because you basically have a completely different condition, so you don't care about blurring the background when you're in a studio. If you have a background like a neutral background, like a white background, then you want to shoot at f8, and you want to shoot at the native ISO, which is 100. By the way, it's interesting here. You can see, well, this is the D800, has not much to do with the lens, but look at the noise at 800. There is almost like zero noise. So 800 is perfectly fine to shoot at with 800 ISO. Okay, so let's go and shoot one more at this length. So let's go to f16. So sometimes when you're shooting like landscapes and you want, to have everything in focus, then you may shoot at f16. Okay, I'm gonna leave it at 1/5 of a second. I know that there is a risk that it may be a little bit of motion shade. Okay, so you can see now everything is in focus, right? Meaning there is no blur background. Because that's sometimes when you're shooting a landscape, or if you're doing even real estate photography, you may want to shoot at f16. So let's see how sharp it is. F16, by the way, f8 is much sharper than f16. So let's compare these two and let's see if that's the case. So this is f8 and f16. So f8 is going to be sharper. Believe it or not, the difference is not that big, which is great because that means when you're shooting landscapes at f16, you're not sacrificing much in terms of sharpness. Okay, all right. I'm gonna set up now at 50 millimeters, and then I'm gonna go 70, and I'm gonna go a little bit faster this time. Okay, so now what I did so that it wouldn't take so much time is I already took the pictures. Okay, so at 50 millimeters, let's see how it did at 2.8. By the way, you can see, look how beautiful the background is. It's really, really nice. So this is one of the big advantages of this zoom lens. You're 50 millimeters at 2.8, and you get a beautiful blur background. By the way, I'm gonna test it also versus my 50 millimeter fixed lens, but today let's just focus on this. So let's see how sharp it is. Pretty sharp. Okay. So when you see, this has to do a little bit also with contrast. So sometimes, and again, I'm not gonna play too much of it. So it has too much exposure, and you see how it goes down. See, now I change the exposure. You can see it a little bit better. I actually thought it would be a little sharper. Let's see, 1/50 of a second, 2.8. I'm focusing on the eye. Okay, this is f4. Okay, f4 looks a lot sharper. So there must have been a little bit of motion blur on my first picture. Okay, this is very sharp. Okay, so obviously the eye is very sharp. By the way, sometimes a lot of people, because when you're at 2.8, you have very little room for error, and you don't want, because you have a very shallow field of view, so a lot of people sometimes prefer to take pictures at f4 when you're taking pictures like in a party or something. Okay, this is f8, so this is probably going to be the sharpest. So let's compare that one with f4. Let's see. So this one is f8 and this one is f4. You can see f8 is a little bit sharper because f8 is the ideal or the optimal aperture for sharpness. This is at okay, f8, f16. I took this one twice because this was 1/3 of a second, so I wouldn't be surprised if it's a little bit, is not as sharp as this one. Let's see this one. So this one is a little sharper. The shutter speed is a little bit faster. So, and in this one, as you would expect at f16, you can see everything is in focus. So you have no blur background. So you go from f16 all the way to f8, and you can see the difference, right? Here we're at f8, and here we are at 16. So let's compare the two. Okay, so this is the difference. Okay, so this is, here you have pretty much almost everything in focus, and here the background completely blurred. Okay, so now I'm gonna put it now at 70. So I'm gonna set it up at. Okay, so now I took the pictures at 70 millimeters. So you can see my settings here, the 150 of a second, 400 ISO. So I focus on the eye. Let's see, very, very sharp. Okay. By the way, when you're shooting at 70 millimeters at 2.8, it's a very shallow depth of field. So because I'm focusing in the eye, this could probably be even sharper if I were focusing on the letters, because it's focusing right now on the eye, and even half an inch could make a difference. Look at the detail here, the texture on the numbers here. This is just beautiful. And look, this is exactly the look that you want, right? A completely separation from the background. It's completely blurred. So that's why you buy a 2.8. This is at f4. This is at f8. So f8 should be your sharpest. Look at this. This is very, very sharp. Then I took f8 again at a faster shutter speed. This is, I think the only thing that can be sharper than this is when if you take it with a macro lens, which is what it's designed for. And this is f16. I took it twice because here, look, the shutter speed is 1/3 of a second. So I took it again at a higher ISO, 1/8 of a second. Actually, it didn't make much of a difference. Now, here you can see that even when you're at f16, you have blur in the background because you're at 70 millimeters. So you have a shallower depth of field. That's why the wide angle lenses, is what you use for all that. So let me choose all the 2.8. So let me pause this for a second so that I'm not wasting your time. So here, just to end, we have all the different focus points at 2.8. So you have here at 24, at 50, and at 70. Okay, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you have any questions, please put it in the comment section. And also, if you have any questions or any comments, like I said, I'm gonna do more videos on this lens. This is a great lens also for landscape, so I'm gonna do some videos also with landscapes. The next one, what I'm gonna do is I'm going to try the VR. So I'm gonna handhold it and try to go at different shutter speeds to see how slow I can get before I start getting motion blur. Okay, thank you very much. Hope to see you next time.